Hi, I'm Christina, and welcome to this episode of Women's Health, Wealth, and Happiness Interviews to Inspire. This is our very special panel episode with inspiring women, Sharman, Kim, and Sky. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Aloha.
Welcome. Tell us where you are calling from and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
All right. Here I am, Sharman Monroe in Washington, D.C., retired lawyer and judge. And what I do now is I help people and businesses put more money back in their pocket by helping them save money on bills they already pay.
I'm coming from Maui, Hawaii. So it's early in the morning here as we're recording this. And I'm a feng shui intuitive coach. I help women business owners and solopreneurs essentially be able to make better decisions so that they can create more flow and magic in their lives.
Hi, I'm coming to you from San Luis Obispo, California, and I'm a filmmaker and educator. I did the film called Lives Well Lived, which celebrates the wit and wisdom of people 75 years and older. I interviewed 40 people with a collective life experience of 30,000 years, and it's currently airing on PBS, and my book about it's on Amazon. So that's what I'm at. Working on 3 more films right now.
Oh, I can't wait for this conversation. Sharman, what questions would you like to ask?
Well, I was looking at everyone's LinkedIn profile today. I went and did that. Kim, what drew you to doing feng shui? Am I saying it right?
It's actually feng shui.
Feng.
So,
Okay, feng shui.
yeah,
All right. You know
yeah.
how yeah,
Most people
yeah.
mispronounce it. So, you're not alone.
What drew you to that area? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So what happened for me when my husband and I at the time moved into a new home, things weren't going well. And it was a home that we had sort of designed. It was beautiful, new. It was on a nice 5-acre property and all of that, but things just weren't going well. Like with the relationship, we had lots of money coming in, but so much money going out, like a lot more money going out. And I happened to be at the library with my boys who were little at the time and stumbled across a book, as we do, on feng shui. And I started reading it and started applying things, and I was astounded because it worked and it worked really fast. And the kind of cool, interesting thing about that is I recently just got to introduce the woman that wrote that book at the International Feng Shui Guild Summit we had in May. So it was really fun for me to actually introduce her. It was Karen Rao Carter. And I felt like I was coming full circle.
All right. All right. No, I just thought that was interesting that you have taken that on as a career. Usually when you hear about it, it's like I do over here,
Mm.
but it doesn't encompass what you do to help people in its entirety. It's just like usually people talk about it's just this is and I do a little bit of this. That's how
Yeah.
I hear it. So I
It's
thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and for me, it's like a puzzle. I love getting a new floor plan. So I just had a client in Minnesota when I was there that bought a new home. And she's like, you got to feng shui it because I had feng shuied her office. I had feng shuied her previous home. And it's like a puzzle for me. So seeing the floor plan and figuring out what's going on in their lives and how their home is impacting it is really, really fun for me.
Oh, all right. Awesome. The only thing I know about feng shui is I shouldn't have my bed headboard. My door is here. I shouldn't have the headboard on the same wall. It should be on the opposite wall so I can see what's coming in.
Exactly. That
That's it.
helps you be prepared for what's coming in life.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Exactly. Well, you got it nailed, that one thing.
Okay.
And mirrors. Mirrors are a big part of feng shui as well, where they're placed.
Yeah, and there different schools. So there's many different schools of feng shui actually. When we were looking at doing our summit this year, we were looking at the fact that there's like 12 or 13 different schools of feng shui. And so different schools of feng shui have different opinions about mirrors and about how to use them. But we definitely do often use them to expand spaces. Or if there's an area that's missing in a home, what we call a missing piece, we will use a mirror to energetically push that wall out and expand the space. They're very can be very powerful, but you do have to be a little bit careful with some of them.
Where does the art of feng shui come from?
It's actually an ancient Chinese tradition. It's actually a science as well as an art. And it comes originally from when the Chinese were burying their elders. And it was felt if you buried your elder in an auspicious location, facing an auspicious direction, that that would bring good luck to everyone that followed. So that's actually the very origins of it.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Sharman, would you like to ask Sky a question?
Yes, I love that you are highlighting the accomplishments of older people because I agree with you 100% that at a certain age, society stops looking at older people and casts them aside. Why was this important for you to do that documentary that you did?
I was looking at approaching 50 and looking for positive role models of aging and just not finding them out there in the media. I had a really great role model of my grandmother who is 100 and still working out at the gym. And so that was kind of what started me on this quest. I think wanting to find other people out there who could be my role models for positive aging.
Okay, all right. And have you found a lot?
Well, I interviewed 40 people and during the course of 4 years, and I certainly have found more since then because everyone knows that I've worked on this film. So anytime anything comes out about that, I hear about it. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's phenomenal. I think that's phenomenal
Yeah.
because I'm getting up there. I'm up. No, I am up there in age. I'm not going to say getting, I am up there in age and I keep working. And people always come to me like, so what are you going to do when you retire? I'm like, no, I'm not the person who's going to sit at home, watching Netflix.
Hmm.
I just can't do that. That would drive me crazy. I can do it for take a day off, take a day off from work and do that. Maybe just
Yeah.
binge watch, to like decompress, but every day and have nothing to do other than get up and piddle around the house. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how they do it.
Sky, how easy is it for you to find the guests that you've interviewed and for them to tell you their stories?
Well, I mean, it took 4 years, so it takes time. And I sent out an email blast to my friends, family, and I've been an educator for years, so to all the people that I taught over the years at the university, and said, I have this crazy idea for a project, and here's a little 1 minute clip of my grandmother working out at the gym. And if you have somebody like her, please nominate them. And so that was really, I got all these incredible, heartwarming nominations. And I think once people knew what I was working on, people were coming out of the woodwork. So, and then I think trying to get people to tell their authentic stories, I did not start filming people when I would meet them for the first time. I would just sit down with them and meet them and talk to them. And so by the time the cameras came out, we were already friends. We had developed a relationship. And I think that because people knew that I was doing this out of a love of my grandmother and kind of the reason that I was doing it at my own personal exploration, I think that people were really much more open and giving in terms of their stories than they would have been otherwise. There was no ulterior motive. And I always say to my students, the more personal, the more universal the message becomes. And that was certainly true for this film.
It's incredible. And can you tell us a little bit about the other films that you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. One of them is called The Mochi Movie, and I recently interviewed George Takei from Star Trek fame, if any of you are Trekkies out there. It's about the Japanese American experience of making mochi to bring in the new year, but it's also about the Japanese American experience because as many of you may know, during World War II, Japanese Americans were incarcerated, over 120,000 people who were, many of them were US citizens who were, because they were of Japanese descent, ended up being rounded up and sent out of their livelihoods with a few weeks' notice for most people. And yet they still figured out a way to make mochi in camp because mochi is a kind of something that they do to bring in the new year and it's a sign of hope. And it's just was so moving to me. And here locally, there was a mochisuki ceremony that was happening, which I went to. 150 people gathered. And I love the intergenerational connection of grandparents and grandkids and everyone in between getting together to make food. I think we can all relate to that. I think anyone that's listening right now can think of something. Food has a way of bringing us together. Like, what were your traditions that brought you together around food, around the table, around cooking together? And sharing that wisdom and that love. Certainly for me, I was so close to my grandmother that I feel like I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen. So this really appealed to me. The other film is called The Primetime Band, which is about people coming back to music later in life. And it's about a band that's a real band that is in Santa Barbara that's made up of about 75 people. And they rehearse every Tuesday night and then they perform throughout Santa Barbara County. In fact, they just did a big performance on July 4th at the Santa Barbara County Courthouse and had like almost 2,000 people show up. It's just lovely. And they also are part of a group, most of them called the Music Van, which goes into third grade classrooms and introduces music to 8-year-olds, many of whom have never touched an instrument in their lives. And they all get to play wind, percussion, brass, and woodwind and strings. And it's just great to see, the look on a young kid's face when he picks up the trombone for the first time and is like doing his thing. And so I love that intergenerational twist. I love that. And the last film is called The Jollytologist, and it's about a man named Alan Klein who he's in his 80s and he registered that name. So it's trademarked, you can't use it. But he lost his wife early on to a rare liver disease. And the way that they got through that moment in time was really through humor and laughter. And so he was originally a set designer and he went for like Merv Griffin and Captain Kangaroo and all these great shows. But after that happened, it was a life-changing event. And so he went back to school and studied humor and grief. And I think he's written about a dozen books and done a TEDx talk. We need more humor and we need to figure out ways that we can get through the tough times with humor and laughter. So I'm really excited about that film as well. So lots of projects juggling in the air right now.
Awesome.
That was fun. You just mentioned Captain Kangaroo, Wayback Machine.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Merv Griffin too. That's another way back.
Yeah.
Sure.
I remember being forced to watch that because we had one TV in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the adults wanted to watch.
Yeah.
You wanted to watch TV, that's what you had to watch. If you didn't, you go play.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Kim, what questions would you like to ask?
When I was digging into Sharman's information, it did strike me the Star Trek affinity. And so my question is more silly. And I want to ask Sharman, who's your favorite Star Trek or Marvel character and why?
Okay, I can go with Marvel first is Iron Man. I just love his attitude. Like, I know what I know, what I know. And if you don't like it, that's on you. Yeah, so that's my favorite Marvel. Star Trek. Oh, geez, it's so many characters in Star Trek. My favorite captain is Captain Kirk. And I loved when Chris Pine created the character again. He didn't recreate the character. He did the character just like William Shatner created the character. And he just did it again. But
embodied it, really.
Yeah, he just revived it. Thank you. He didn't create another Captain Kirk. So Captain Kirk is my favorite one because he gets it done by hook or crooked. He'll figure it out. He gets it done. I like that attitude. If he has to break the rules, but he got it done, everybody's like, and they're like, okay, fine.
I love that. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that the people that inspire us are, like those two characters are like really, I think of Iron Man as like, strength, strong, really iron and metal in general in feng shui is all about focus, right? So it's like also like, he's just focused. He's like, this is the way it is, right? Like he embodies that as well. And just the whole fantasy of Star Trek, I think, is really something. When I was young, I definitely watched a lot of the movies, and one of the things is just like that fantasy of like you have this world in the sky, like your city in the sky.
Yeah. It was watching Star Trek that gave me the desire to go to school and study computers
Really?
because
Oh,
of what
that's
I saw on Star Trek. And their
interesting.
computers would talk to them. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So I went to school and I studied computer technology. That's what my first degree is in. And today we're living with Star Trek.
We are.
We're looking at each other as we talk to each other on the phone. We're doing
Mhm.
everything on our cell phone. That's a tricorder.
I
Yeah.
just want to do the beam me up, Scotty. I want to be
Yeah,
teleported. We
yeah, I'm
haven't
ready
done
for
that
that one.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready for that one. Yeah,
That
yeah.
would be
I may
good.
be like Dr. McCoy, be like, I don't know about that. But once I see that it works, I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, it seems like that should be something that would be easy for us to create, right?
I don't know. You got to take the atoms apart and then put it on everything back together the exact same way. I don't know about that. But the idea, and then the replicator. All you had to go to the replicator and say what kind of food you want.
Well, there you go with the printers they have now, the 3D printers. I mean, we got that
Yes,
already.
yes, yes. So, Star Trek is alive and well right here with us.
Yeah, for
Right here
sure.
with us.
For sure. I love that. And then Sky, I was fascinated by the elderly film that you did, Lives Well Lived, because my dad lived to be almost 98. And so he was one of those people that was just really vibrant. And my mom, his wife, died 20 years before him. So he was on his own for a lot of years and just experienced most of his friends dying while he was still alive. He did have some younger friends from golf and things like that that surpassed him, but for the most part, a lot of his friends were gone. By the time he came around, it was interesting because he had given me a list of who he wanted to be his pallbearers. And by the time he passed, and this had been years ago, half these people aren't here anymore, and the other half can't even walk up this down the aisle kind of thing. So my question for you, Sky, is what's the most surprising advice you've ever received on aging or aging well?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing was that, everybody thinks, so it's all about eating well and exercise, which I guess that's part of it. I mean, my grandmother always used to say she never ate processed foods, but she didn't start working out at the gym until she was 80. 80. It was like something that she did. I think it was more of a social thing, and it was good for her because she would say, move it or lose it. But the reality is that the three things that people really, well, there's really four things that people had in common was one, having a sense of purpose is super important. And I think that we kind of forget about that. And a lot of people look forward to retiring, but they don't have a reason or, what they're going to do or like a plan of what they're going to do when they retire. And I think that that's true no matter what age you are. If you're younger and you're floundering and you don't know what your sense of purpose is, it's equally kind of that, feeling of being unbalanced. And I think the second thing is that the people that I interviewed all had a really good sense of community, and it didn't necessarily have to be family, it could be friends, but they felt like they weren't alone and they were part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that's really important. There's been studies that have shown that isolation is actually worse for you than smoking cigarettes. I think we realize that that's a big factor, but it was certainly something that I discovered with all the people that I interviewed. And then lastly, I think the third and fourth thing kind of go hand in hand is this idea of resilience and positivity. All the people that I interviewed, they're 75 and older, so a lot of them lived through World War II. They lived through some really trying times, and being able to live through those moments, but yet still remain positive. And I'm reminded of Abby Justison, who I interviewed, and she said to me that in her 50s, the book Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning became really important to her. And one of the things that she really took away from that was that there are so many times in our lives when we can't control the things that are happening around us, but what we can control is our attitude about how we deal with those things. And I think that resilience and that sense of controlling your attitude and having that positive attitude, seeing life as the glass is half full rather than half empty, I think those were the things that really stood out as common elements. Because we all want to know, well, how do you live a good life? What are the secrets? And I would say that those are really the secrets. I mean, sure, eating well and exercising, but really that wasn't the common thread. It was those four things that were really the common thread: having a sense of purpose, community, and resilience and positivity.
And that rings true with my dad too. Even after he sold his business, he continued to work. He had a little bar, like a neighborhood bar, and he continued to work there after he sold the business. He had sold it to his head bartender, and he continued to work there well into his late 80s. And then even after that, he was working as a ranger at the golf course. So he'd go on and drive the little cart around and pick
Yeah.
up balls. And so he was always like busy.
Mhm.
Definitely rings true. He had a lot of people around him. He was
Mhm.
very much a people person. He loved that. He was in the war. He was actually on a ship for 2.5 years in the war. And so he definitely had some stories about that, but he didn't dwell on the negativity of it. He really focused on like the things that he kind of the sneaky things he did, like cutting a little hole in the vent above his bunk to get some of the air conditioning that the officers were getting. And just little things like that, that he was kind of a little sneaky one. But for him, way to survive, he's like, it's so hot, I can't handle it. He's a Minnesota guy, the heat would just about killed him on this ship. So that's really interesting. And food wise, no, he was not somebody that ate well. I mean, he loved his chocolate, he loved his candy, he liked his beer with a little bit of salt in it.
I think everything in moderation. There's something about quality of life versus quantity of life as
Yeah.
well. So I think everything
Yeah.
is a balance and finding the joys in the little everyday moments. And sometimes that has to do with having a little bit of chocolate every once in a while. My grandmother
Exactly.
would have a little glass of wine every once in a while. And I
Yeah.
don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's again about balance and about quality versus quantity.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mhm.
I hear the blue zone, the
Yeah.
yeah, the purpose, the community. One of the stories in one of the blue zones was they had a particular wine that they drink, but it's been made in this space for years, and there's like some secret to their wine. And like, oh, you have to. It's part of what gets us to live as long as we do. Want to be part of the conversation? Join our women's community on Patreon. Check out the notes below. It's fascinating. All right, Sky, questions you would like to ask the ladies?
Sure. And I'd like to ask you too, Christina, which is one of the questions that I asked everyone in the film is what advice would you give your younger self? So, Sharman, I'll start with you. What advice would you give your younger self?
Be patient.
Mhm.
Be patient. When we're younger, we're running around and I got to get this car and I got to get it now. I got to get this house. I got to get it now. And we're so busy grabbing it, and we're in a rush. And what I've learned in getting older is that, first of all that stuff. It's stuff. It's really not that important in the long run. Yes, you need a place to live, but you don't have to have the 55-room mansion. You don't have to have that. What's more important is relationships, not stuff. I would tell my younger self it's more important relationships, not comparing your stuff to somebody else's stuff, and be patient because your turn will come. It's just not coming when you're looking for it because you're so busy looking for it. You probably ran past it. But be patient. Be
That's great. And
patient.
a little anecdote to that, I had a friend of mine that was saying the difference between Europeans and Americans, one of the differences is that when we have more money as Americans, we buy more stuff. When
Yeah,
Europeans have more money, they spend that money on experiences and
yeah,
memories, on creating memories. And I think there's some truth to that, having spent a lot of time in Europe. It's just a different pace of life, but I think that's, Sharman, a little bit of what you're saying is slow down. Don't feel like you have to rush through everything to
yeah,
get to the next level because you don't even enjoy the ride on the way there. And you miss a lot trying to get stuff that really doesn't matter. It's much more about the people around you and the experiences that you have and the memories that you create. So you could be
yeah.
surrounded. What would you rather at the end of your life? Be surrounded by a lot of stuff or a lot of incredible memories?
A lot of incredible people and memories.
Right.
And I had a friend, I saw him out and he didn't look well. And then later on, I found out that he was dying and he knew it. And at his funeral, he had a letter read that he wrote. And his letter said, I thank you all for being my friend. You all brought experiences to my life that I would not have had. He didn't say, I'm glad I had the Jaguar.
Yeah.
I'm glad I lived here. He thanked the people in his life. That is so profound. You hear experts say that's what's more important, but to hear someone that write a letter to you and all of his friends and say, I am so grateful that all of you were in my life because you poured in and helped me enjoy life. I thought that was awesome. And it was funny when you say, when you were younger, I think my granddaughter, it must be very wise. She's going off to basic military training. She has to leave the day after Christmas. So she gets her orders, this is her first time. So she gets her orders right after Thanksgiving. You're leaving the day after Christmas. We're like, well, what do you want to do? Okay, we'll put the tree up early. We'll buy your gifts early. You tell us what you want to do so we can have Christmas while you're here. She picked experiences. She wanted to take memories with her to boot camp.
Wow.
So she went online and found different activities that we could do together as a family and take pictures. That's what she wanted to take with her, not stuff.
Nice. Well, Kim, I will pose the same question to you. What do you wish you had known as a younger person? What advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah. So for me, it would be to trust your intuition. Regardless of what anyone else thinks or says or what your mind is trying to tell you, I would say trust in your intuition is the priority, and that's going to make life easier for you. Because there's a lot of times where I didn't trust my intuition. And even now, I've gotten really, really good at that. I like an intuition as definitely my higher wisdom, my higher self, but I also feel that connection between my angels and guides. So it's like those nudges that I'm getting to do something. To just as a very simple example, we were headed out on a road trip, my partner and and I had the thought, I said, hey, we need to bring some duct tape. I said, I don't know why, but I'm getting this like intuition to bring some duct tape. I said, do you have any? And he's like, yeah, I've got duct tape. I put it in a spot where I knew I could find it in the truck. And sure enough, we were camping in Montana and the tent pole broke.
Oh,
and so we would not have been able to put the tent up without the duct tape. And it just like one of those things that just super convenient to have what we needed when we needed it, right? But it's simple. I could have been questioning like, well, I don't know why we need to do that. We have so much stuff. Like, why would we need that? But I didn't. I just was like, oh, we need duct tape. And similar kind of thing happened with his vehicle. He was getting the truck serviced before the trip, and it was really just like a transmission flush, and they found the ball bearings were bad. And they said, you can't drive this across the country. And they were telling us, we can't get to it till Monday. And we were supposed to leave on Friday. And so I just literally asked my angels and I said, hey, let's get this truck done on Thursday night or Friday morning at the very latest so that we can take off on time. And then I just sort of let go of it. I just like put my angels on it and I let go of it. The people at the shop had said, we'll let you know if we can't get to it. We're not going to start it. Right. And so Thursday all day, never heard a word from the shop. At 4:30, I had the thought, I'm like, you need to call the shop. And he's like, I don't want to bug them. They haven't called me, yada, yada. Finally, 5 to 5, the shop closes at 5 o'clock. 5 to 5, he calls the shop and it was done. It was done. We were ready. We had to race down there to pick it up because 5 minutes before they closed, but it was done. And so part of that too, I think with that younger version of myself is to trust that we do have assistance from, our angels and guides from the other side, from people that have transitioned even. And I often ask my mom for parking spots, right? Find me a good spot. I'm going to Paia town where it's really busy, find me a good spot to park. And that intuition piece would be the thing that I think would have made my life a lot easier had I embraced that sooner.
I'm embracing that now. And you're right. When you listen, you come out in a better place than when you don't.
Exactly.
Well, Christina, can I ask you that question? I know you're the host, but can I ask you that question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what about this? What about this? What about this? But I'm just like, wow, a lot of the things I've always pushed and questioned myself on, because I was like, there's fear, but I'm like, no, there's times where I'm brave. Another one I was thinking of, like doing things. And I'm like, well, again, I've pushed myself forward to do things that I wouldn't, but I would be doing other things sooner in my life.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
in kind of the opposite of being patient is go and do it. Quit waiting for the thing, get through, and don't second guess yourself. I think that is more like the two there, where it's kind of fear, kind of not fear, kind of saying, okay, well, what are other people going to think? And it's not necessarily other people, but it's just like I've had so much family influence when I think about what fear is. For example, I grew up in Cleveland, and my mother is like, New York City is scary. And I'm just like, why is it scary? So I pushed through that fear and I said, I'm going. And 19 years
Yeah.
old, driving around Manhattan, going, I have no idea where I'm going, but I'm going to figure this out. Because again, this is before Google Maps, and just doing those things. And so, yeah, it's just continuing to not second guess myself.
Mhm.
I even like when I think about my podcasting journey, the birthday of podcasting was 22 years ago. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. When podcasting came out, my sister said, you need to do this. I was like, okay, what is it? And just kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off until, 24. How many years later? And so just doing it. Just do the thing. I think that would be the biggest advice I would give myself
Mhm.
my entire life is just do the thing. Quit second guessing. Go.
Yeah, when you were talking about Apple Maps, I remember those Thomas guides. Do you remember that? I used to teach and work down in LA, and that was like my Bible was to have one of those Thomas guides in my car. And now we don't even think about it. We use Google Maps or Apple Maps, and that's a good and a bad thing because it makes me more fearless in terms of going to places that I wouldn't necessarily go. But sometimes I think I use it as a crutch. So I really try sometimes just to wing it a little bit and go back to the old days where I didn't rely on my phone and my device so much and really just thought about it and used my head instead of the device. So I love that you went to New York and didn't before we had maps like that. And that's much more courageous, I think, in some ways. And
For sure.
Yeah, yeah, more
For sure.
more courageous than me. I don't like to go to New York by myself because it's just so much going on. I need somebody else there with me.
Mm.
Yeah, I want somebody else there with me. It's just so much going on.
Says the woman who lives in Washington, D.C.
I know. Yeah, I was just
Right.
saying that.
If you want to go on a scale, it's like New York is one. It would be one, the fastest. Everything's always moving. Everything is always open. But then you come to DC, maybe you're at a 3. You go down to the North Carolina, get down south. Now you're at a 5. So
You're in Maui, you're a 10.
all right. There you go. All right. See.
And San Luis Obispo is called Slow Town, so I think we're
Okay.
right
All right.
there with you in Hawaii.
I love it. I love it. So here's my fun question. As Sky has done her journey with filmmaking and documentaries, if you could make a documentary, what would you make it about? I'll answer that first. I would actually do it on my family history, my mother being first generation over from the Philippines. And, I've captured some of her journey through my interviewing her, but even more so, more about that background. And my grandmother passed away about 10 years before I was born. And that is something else I want to learn more about her. Last time I was there, I was listening to my cousins talk about her. And I'm like, oh, wow, because they're older than I am. So they remember her. And I'm like, I need
Mm.
to have, even with the language barrier, interviews with them to find out who this woman was who had birthed 9 children, 6 into adulthood, and ran that house. My grandfather may have been the mayor, but my grandmother ran things.
That's an interesting question. I don't have an answer. Really have to think about what would I want to inform and teach people about that maybe they don't know. I have no idea. I never thought about that.
Mhm.
I'll be thinking about it for the rest of the day.
I'm a little bit similar to Sharman that it's not something I've ever thought about. And what first came to mind was something related to showing how energy impacts people. And so, kind of in that real life, so a bit of a feng shui bent to things, like how certain environments impact the people that live in them, certain homes. I just did a feng shui consult for someone who has what we call like a lightning bolt home. And it can give you a lot of ideas and inspiration. It can be really good when you first move in, but then it's like too much energy after you've been in there for a little bit. I guess just to bring about awareness that how much our environments really do impact us, and even all these cell phone towers, even like points of buildings that are aimed at your home or in your office, if you have a piece of furniture that's creating an arrow that's aiming at you, and how that's impacting you, and what happens when you shift it, right? And how do you feel, and how does your system calm down, and maybe even like digging into the science of that. I'm imagining, I'm not a science person, but I think that there's probably like they can do some electrodes to see how the body calms down when it's not feeling stress from the environment. So that's kind of where I'd go with it.
Okay, I have an idea. It's something that's, I don't know if you call it a pet peeve, but it's something that I see people doing and it's to their detriment and they don't realize it. Reinvention. You can reinvent yourself at any time. So many people think, well, I'm a doctor. I got to be a doctor forever and ever. Amen. I'm a teacher. I have to be this person forever and ever. Amen. I spent this money on my education. I have to stay here forever and ever because I'm a
Mm.
retired, I used to be a lawyer and a judge, and I have reinvented myself. For me, it was simple, but I would like to do a documentary to let people know it's okay. It's okay. And you have transferable skills that maybe you aren't aware of. But it's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I used to be a doctor, I used to be a lawyer, I used to be whatever. I'm gonna switch now. I think I want to do something else. I think I want to do something else. And then prepare yourself to do it. Because there's probably, I guess if I did some research, there's probably been a lot of people in history who started out one place and ended up someplace else. And only place we see is where they ended up. We've forgotten where they've come from. And I think that would be a good documentary to let people know it's okay to
Yeah.
do that. It's okay.
Mm, I love that. I've definitely reinvented myself several times. I've been a jewelry designer, I've been a gold buyer, I've been an insurance claims examiner, like all of these different things.
Sky and I belong to a group where we are around a lot of women who are in that third act, recreating their life from once upon a time corporate to what they want to do now. And it's funny because that used to be a question that I love to ask people, and I still love to ask it, what do you want to be when you grow up? And people would laugh at me. They're like, I'm a full-grown adult. And like, yeah, but what do you really want to do?
Yeah, yeah. I think we get stuck. If whatever it is we spent the money on to get educated, a lot of people just get stuck there.
Mhm.
And they may be miserable, but for some reason they feel they can't change. It'd be wrong to change. What will people think of me if I change? All of that comes into play. So they just stay there and they're stuck and they're not enjoying life. I would love to do a documentary on that. Yep.
I love it. And to Kim, who is full of intuition, how do you, Sharman and Sky, feel about your own intuition these days?
I'm really trusting it. I have gotten very good at just going with it. And when I do intuitive readings, I have to get out of the way, right? Because if I let my mind get in there, it would be talking me out of sharing whatever it is that's coming through. And that doesn't work. It's not a good reading if I'm trying to do it. In fact, just the other day, I had someone that asked a question. She had an ethical thing that came up at work. And I was like, I'm so glad I don't have to answer this. Because I literally just tune in and relay the information that comes through. And it's always fascinating to me to see what comes up, right? I'm just as curious about the answer as they are because I don't know what's going to come through. I don't know what's going to come out. I feel like as I've gotten older, I don't care what other people think like I did when I was young. And that makes it a lot easier, I feel, to just follow that intuition.
Well, for me, I am a Christian. I read the Bible. I believe the Bible. I follow the Bible. So for me, it would be the Holy Spirit giving me direction on what it is to do in life. And that's happened several times and it's been right. So I'm learning to, when I hear that voice, because I know it's different from mine, to
Mhm.
follow that lead,
Yeah.
even if it's scary. Because I followed the lead, it's been scary and it came out fine. That would be following what your gut is telling you. And it comes out fine. That's why you're being told to do that. That's why you're getting the direction because you
Hmm.
don't know. So for me, it's the Holy Spirit. Now I'm learning as I've gotten older to trust it more and more and more and more.
That's what got me to Maui. I just listening, listening to that voice. I'd never visited, didn't know anybody here, moved here by myself, sight unseen, just was guided, and it turned out beautifully.
Yeah, I think following your intuition is super important no matter where it leads you. If you follow your intuition, you're never going to regret your decisions. It's always the times that I don't follow my intuition and that gut instinct that I regret my decision. It's amazing how that happens all the time. And, I think the other thing that I've learned is this kind of goes back to what Sharma was saying a long time ago about things and buying things and money. And I have absolutely never let money be the obstacle that has stood in my way of making a decision. I think that many times we come up against these walls where can become a really good excuse, maybe, but I have always said, let me take the money out of the equation and then make my decision based on my gut feeling rather than a financial reason. I have an undergraduate degree in finance and I became a photographer. So I definitely, from the time I was in my 20s, because I realized early on, if I went down the path of doing finance, I was not going to be happy. And I didn't want to settle in my 20s. I just thought I got to follow my passion. If I don't do that now and follow this like voice in my head that says this is what I need to try, when am I ever going to do that? And I think that I've really tried to do that throughout my life. And it's been a good thing. Let's face it, we have to have enough money to live and to eat and to do those kind of things. But once you get beyond that, you don't really need a heck of a lot. When I got out of grad school, I au paired so that I could have a place to live, but I could still follow my passion. So maybe you give up certain things to be able to follow your dreams. And putting together a film like Lives Well Lived, where I'm interviewing all these people over 75. When I started doing that, people are like, who's going to fund this? And I rented out rooms in my house through Airbnb to fund my film. So, sometimes you can get creative to follow your dreams and follow your intuition and your heart, but it's the most important thing that you can do. Because again, looking back on our lives, like what are the things that we're going to regret? It's usually those moments where we didn't follow our intuition.
And it's so interesting because I find, again, getting older, meeting people who are older, and how much more people are letting that come through and stop that second guessing that we do on ourselves. What I love is all of you how getting to your potential have moved into that and found that happy place for yourselves by listening to yourselves like, this is where I need to be. This is what I want to do. And, congratulations to all of you ladies for what you do. And so now it's time to sum everything up. Sky, I'd like to hear and share with us your last words for today's panel.
It's so interesting because I think a theme kind of emerged about following your gut intuition and having experience over material things, that's kind of what we all have in common. And so I would say to anybody listening, maybe those are good things that we've learned from talking with each other today, is really learning to trust your intuition and following your passion and creating really wonderful experiences and having a good support group of friends that you can count on.
Yeah, I would second that. I agree. That's the common theme that I hear in this conversation. Relationships, follow your instincts, follow the Holy Spirit, however you want to term it, and do what is right for you. Do what's right for you. It's for you to do. That's what I'm hearing. That's how I would sum it up.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the other thing that was coming to me about all of this is to really feel what you're feeling. So when something comes up, whether it's an opportunity or an idea or a thought pops in your head, to feel how that feels to you in your physical body. Like, does that feel light? Does it feel fun? Does it excite you? Or does it feel heavy? And does it feel like constrictive? That type of thing. So I think our bodies are amazing at giving us information and guidance as well, and can confirm if something is right or true for us. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have fear around things. Like moving to Maui was a big deal, right? Moving to an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean was a big deal. But once I got the guidance, I did ask for affirming signs. I said, give me a sign that this is my path. So we also have to remember that we can ask for confirmation. We can ask for additional signs, additional messages. And once I got that really confirming sign, I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm going.
Well, ladies, thank you for sharing your stories with us today. For all our viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been another episode of Women's Health, Wealth, and Happiness, Interviews to Inspire, with our inspiring women today, Sharman, Kim, and Sky. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Fun.